TED Talks has officially lost its rabbit-ass mind. Now, 10 years or so back, I fell in love with TED Talks. It not only offered for an opportunity to dive into a multitude of subjects, but to get insights from people that I probably would have never heard from otherwise, right? TED Talks was a serious platform with serious as well as non-serious subjects that were at least interesting. And if anything, they were thought-provoking. However, as the world went woke, so did TED Talks. And this is easily one of the best examples of the ridiculous nature of what TED Talks is now platforming, to use one of the leftist wokies terminology, right? Platforming. They're platforming shit like this. Let's just get into it, and I'm going to give my 2 cents as we move along. Get yourself some water or some tea, and let it be, let it be, let it be. Let's get into it.
Ninemi kamisquachihuascaigan, Kampamotatlan, Blackfoot, Cree, Nakota, Soto, a Métis, Tlatsokamati. Bless all our relations. I'm from Anahuac. That's my motherland on Nicaragua territory. I'm Mestizix. My name is Quexala. I'm grateful to be with all of you here today in Amisquachihuascaigan, the motherland and the gathering lands of the Blackfoot, the Cree, the Nakota, the Soto, and the Métis nations.
That's some heavy breathing.
The Métis nations. I also want to acknowledge that we are here, every single one of us is here, and living our lives in the way that we are, because those treaties, to the Treaty 6 that allows us to be on these lands, has been broken. It's been broken countless times, from the way that we drive our cars to what fuels them, to the way that we relate to each other, to the way that we don't know how to properly pronounce Amisquachihuascaigan. So, what am I here to talk about, aside from that? I came in and I kind of wanted to make everybody uncomfortable. And I wanted to start with that broken treaties talk, because we have all come here and we've consented to share ideas. And in that consenting to share ideas, we're consenting to feel uncomfortable. We're consenting to have those things in our perceptions.
When those on the far left tell you that they are sharing ideas, what they mean is the ideas that reflect their own ideologies. There is no space, no room at all for those who may have even the slightest of a contradiction within their own thought process. Not the slightest. Now, maybe a Democrat, somebody who just professes to be a Democrat, or a quote-unquote old school liberal, sure, there's a conversation to be had. But when it comes to the woke ideologue, if you disagree, that's why you got the clapping seals in the audience. They didn't even know what the hell she was talking about, like everybody else in the audience. They're like, huh? Wait, where are we again? But anyway, let me let her go on, because it gets interesting. It gets interesting.
Questioned. But I have not a history, but I have a low tone of voice, and it sounds aggressive to some folks. So I had to do a lot of thinking of how am I going to talk about this. And I do a lot of thinking about it all the time, because I'm also a teacher and an educator. And so I'm always talking about decolonization with folks, whether it's in the streets or whether it's in front of a whiteboard. I'm always bringing it up, and I have to wonder, how can I do this in the kindest way? So I called a good friend of mine, Ealing, this morning, and they are one of the most prayerful people I know. And we met at Ochetichakowing, which is one of the largest camps of Standing Rock. And while we were there, we got to start a decolonization class that was only for Indigenous people and people of color. And every other night, I taught a class that was for absolutely all of the camp. And at these lessons, I got to come up with a couple of mantras.
That is what we would call segregation. It's a terminology that would oftentimes be used, is very well known within the Democratic plantation, as they instituted 1870s Jim Crow laws. Split the colored folk from the other folk. That's interesting. That is woke.
Mantras or catchphrases that people caught on to. And one of them that Ealing reminded me of today was, panic is not prayerful. So I brought that with me here. And I brought my sister with me, and we were sitting outside. We came in during the first session and it had started. And we were sitting outside I was with my laptop, we were talking about the talks, and security came up to us and asked us if we were loitering. And like, I don't know how to tell y'all, as like a displaced urban indigenous person who's displaced in someone else's urban territory, how many times that has happened to me.
Isn't it incredible how they perceive the world through the lenses of, like, okay, there's one thing with the race, gender dynamic, right? We all know somebody who sees everything through the eyes of racism. You know, somebody looks at them, it was racism. Somebody doesn't look at them, it's racism, right? They don't get the job, racism. They get the job, racism. Like, you can't win with these people. But this is like a subcategory of a subcategory. So it's like, you know, indigenous peoples on colonized land who, like, that seems like such a complexity of life. Most of us are just trying to live a regular life. And there's a group of individuals who is fixated on creating these like boxes within boxes, almost like an inception of identities that they are seeing the world through and victimizing themselves on the basis of. You weren't asked by the security guard if you're loitering because you are a quote unquote indigenous person on a colonized piece of land. You are being asked by a security guard if you're on this property because you're loitering. You're sitting outside of the property. Now, okay, perceived loitering. Let me put it that way, right? You are preparing for your speech, so you're sitting there and they're asking, are you loitering? What are you doing here? The security guard's job, who I can almost assume is a POC, a person of color, was asking you, what are you doing here? Because my job is to secure the premises. He probably thought you was a white woman, I'll be honest. And I assumed the security guard's gender, of course, because I do those type of things. I do.
And it was mind-blowing, and I didn't know how to interact with it. But then I reminded myself, panic is not prayerful. And I tried to gather my thoughts and tried to say, what am I going to talk about today? What am I going to bring up? How far is it going to go? And it's been really hard. I'm going to be honest with y'all, starting in that way. And having what I'm going to say to y'all, police today, because of the uncomfortability that it brings. But it's also a tremendous opportunity for me to talk to y'all about.
It's because of the stupidity that it brings. The stupidity. Not the uncomfortability, you see. The uncomfortability is a byproduct of the stupidity. That's how that works. Are you kidding me? I was not expecting this. I didn't watch the whole thing. I haven't seen this whole thing. I just saw a snippet of it on Dave Rubin's channel, and I said, "Oh, I got to get into whatever the hell's going on here," because he only used a snippet of it. This is so much better than what I expected. She is basing her call to action, her cry for justice on the basis of having a security guard come up to her outside of this venue asking, what the hell are you doing here? Or whatever venue she was with her friend. The uncomfortability of what I'm about to share. No, sis. It's just cringe.
About uncomfortability and how we can deal with uncomfortability. But I'm not going to take that, because I think that focusing still on the people who are uncomfortable about this is still recreating colonial violence. It's still recreating cis supremacy. It's still recreating able supremacy. It's still recreating white supremacy. So instead, I'm going to do what I usually do when I talk to my classes, is I try to weaponize everybody in there. I try to talk to them about what is colonialism, how do we interact with it, how do we engage with it, and how do we combat it within ourselves, within our families, within our communities, and how do we take that further? What is colonial violence? And it's something that is like really easy to like frame in the past. It's something that's really easy to frame as something that...
For every company, university that has been bullied into accepting these DEI policies, I empathize with you in a way that I never have before. I didn't understand that the people who were pushing you into creating these departments were this capable of stupidity. I'm so sorry that this is what you've had to deal with in the last 8 years. My God, what are you talking about? There is no way she actually believes this. Y'all got to let me know in the comments. Does she actually, but there's no way. She actually believes this?
And it's something that is like really easy to like frame in the past. It's something that's really easy to frame as something that we don't participate in, but really, colonial violence is sitting in these seats right now and being comfortable. Colonial violence is the control of the elements that we have and being warm in this room. And like colonial violence and understanding it in that way is something that we can't all do because we all haven't had those circumstances. But we can all try and understand what colonial violence means to us and how we enact it and how we are complicit in it.
Let me read you guys the little, so there's the little yogi teas. I like the little messages on the back. I don't know if it's like the best tasting tea, to be honest, but I like these. So this reads, many paths lead to the same destination. It doesn't matter how you get there. And this is so fitting for this speech because many paths will indeed lead to stupidity, but it doesn't matter how you get there. Like there is a multitude of paths that will lead you to stupidity. And this is one of those paths. The path of the perpetual victim, the individual who sees you sitting there in an air-conditioned or in an insulated space as your colonial privilege. This is colonization, not what's happened on a multitude of the continents around us for eons, right? Whether it was white folks or any other type of folks, because people have been colonizing each other forever. People have been enslaving one another since the beginning of time. And fortunately, we've stepped into more of a reasonable time within human history where we are letting go of such things or we are making such things taboo. But it's the same argument with the systemic racism of 2024. This ethereal racism that is always looming over us. You can't see it, feel it, smell it, taste it, touch it, but it's there. Oh, colonialization is in the air. It's like a fragrance. Colonizer. Colonizer 51. Like, I didn't know I was stepping into this level of idiocracy. I am genuinely in awe right now. I am shocked. I'm not just grieved, I am in awe. This is what happens when you saturate universities with dogma and doctrine that has no basis in reality. These are the same people who will preach for the mutilation of children's genitalia. These are the exact same people. These are the ones who are fighting for the unaliving of as many infants as humanly possible. These are those individuals. The ones who want the boys inside of their bathroom because they say that they're girls. That's who these people are, who use those type of words, who believe that you sitting in an insulated room is a display of your colonial colonizing ways.
I started talking about uncomfortability, but I didn't talk about why it makes people uncomfortable. And I think that I need to do like a whole overview of colonial violence through the years to do that. So let's start with, what is colonialism? Colonialism is another country or nation state coming to a territory with the purpose of taking the resources of that territory and appropriating them. That happens. Seems like a common story, right? Like, we know how that goes. But what happens when they come to these territories is that they also bring their axiology, which is a big word for how we quantify, how we give value, and how we prescribe worth to things. So when colonizers come upon contact, they decide, this is the worth of the people. This is the worth of the resources. This is the worth of the land. This is what we can pursue here. And that becomes embedded in all of the institutions that create that nation state afterwards. So when we get to post.
Yes, it's called an ideology. It's the way in which a society functions. What do they value and what do they not value? Hey, guess who else has those? Every living human being. A personal ethos, a value system. Some people, if you go into their own ecosystem, aka their personal space, you will quickly know that you are not as valuable as you may be in another person's space, right? To one person, you may be the apple of their eye. Grandmama, she may see you as the apple of their eye. But that chick over there, she don't want you anywhere near her. That's a value system. Yeah. And it becomes a societal standard in most cases. And hopefully it's one that is set in principles, in, a certain level of integrity and honesty and things of that nature. You want those to be what rules your society more than not. The Judeo-Christian values that they're oftentimes framed, right? You want those to be at the foundation of your society, and you tend to have a smoother going than if you have whatever the hell this ideology is, where you sit in a room and it's air conditioned and that makes you a colonizer.
Get to post-colonialism or settler colonialism, all of our institutions, all of our policies, all of our governance structures are based off of those beliefs that were brought upon contact. And then that shapes how we talk about epistemology, which is how we conceive knowledge and how we transfer knowledge, and what knowledge we see as valid. And we can see that in all our institutions. We see that in our education institutions and our medical institutions, how indigenous medicines are not a part of them at all. But we're getting there, but we're very slowly getting there with indigenous people having to fight and have their backs to the wall constantly.
Ever struggled to get a credit card when you have poor or no credit? Then you need Self. Simply download the app
And then what settler colonialism does to us is that it makes us exist within all of these institutions. It makes us have, even from the way that we define our address to the way that we define whether we are indigenous settlers or immigrants, to the way that we interact with them.
Here's the thing that gets me about these individuals. It's kind of like the social media socialists and the comment section communists. If you believe so much in your own ethos, your own ideas, why do you not live those out? I'll be straight up with you guys. I believe in the system of capitalism, the free market capitalistic system. I do. That's why I live in America. That's why, by the grace of God, we moved from Africa, or Zimbabwe more specifically, to the United States. I believe in this system. And so do countless other people, especially those coming from socialist and communistic countries. Now, if you truly believe in communism and you live in a capitalistic society, you can buy a one-way ticket to a communistic country. Most of them will let you in. And they would love for you to be a part of their ecosystem, right? They would love for you to be one of their many peasants. They would love that. So if you believe in the indigenous ways, then why not go that way? For me, I'm not somebody who, quote unquote, subscribes to homeopathic medications, which is like the traditional medicines and things of that nature, right? I don't take aspirins. I don't take ibuprofen. I haven't in over 10 years at this point. And I've been chilling. I take care of my health. I eat what I'm supposed to. I get the proteins and the fats that my body needs. I cut out the sugars, cut out the carbs, and I'm chilling. So as far as if you want to be so indigenous, why don't you take back your language, create a village within whatever subsect, because they do give plots of land. That reparations has been done countless times within the native community. Right? They got money that they give out and things of that nature. I live quite close to a reservation where I live currently. And, there's money that is poured into those places. If you want to build a casino in America, it has to be tied to a reservation in some way where there's a percentage of the money you make that goes into that space. If you believe so much in these ways, then why not abandon the Western way completely and go back to being indigenous? It's because, well, at least my belief is because you're enjoying the fruits of the system that you currently live in. And so you will not let it go. Will you go back to hunting down caribou and creating loincloths? Likely not. Likely not. If you were truly devoted and dedicated to this way of living and so adverse to the one that you continue to criticize, yet you benefit from because you are currently benefiting from this system. No matter how much shit you talk about it, you're benefiting from it. If you believe so much in that one and hate this one, by golly, go and build your own infrastructure. Go and build your own structures by hand. Join with others who have that same belief system. If you're maybe a socialist or communist, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, these are places where you can go today, not too far off. Gladly accept you in. Make you a part of the ecosystem. The government would love to have another pawn within their own game, gladly. And somebody would gladly trade places with you. Millions of people would gladly trade places with you right now, at this very moment.
The healthcare and medical system, all of that shapes how we perceive reality and how we understand how everything is, basically. That's ontology. And axiology, epistemology, and ontology come together for the state to create a narrative and to create what is normal. And so, that's why it's so painful. That's why it's so painful to say to someone, hey, you just did something racist. Because that someone has thought in that way and not questioned themselves for their whole life. It's so painful to have these conversations where we're saying to a teacher, hey, the way you are teaching is violent to these students. Because that teacher, their whole life, might have wanted to teach students and change their lives. Might have wanted to hold those hearts in their hands and guide those students to be the best people they can be. But they're not aware that they're doing that in a violent way. So it's important that when we call out...
The use of words in the woke left is the actual danger. When you start calling forms of teaching violence, violence has a very clear definition. Physical harm. If a teacher puts the Beats by Dre on you, squares up and hits you with the 1-2 combo, that's violent teaching. That's not teaching. Maybe you're teaching a lesson and ass whipping, but that is violence, my friend. And unfortunately, many of our teachers are getting quite a violent exiting from their jobs. Teachers are getting ass beat by some of these students. But to teach ideas that individuals do not subscribe to is not violence. Maybe it's misinformation, maybe it's miseducation, but it's not violence. And when we use words like that, that becomes problematic.
Important that when we call out these violences, we do it in a good way. We do it in a nice way. We do it in a kind way. We do it in a loving way, like Jesse told me backstage. So, we communally constructed ways of engaging and combating colonial violence as this awesome community of decolonial class that we had at Ochetisha going. Some days there was 5 of us and we ended up just eating dinner in my tent. And some days there were 300 of us in this massive dome. For 3 weeks there was 300 of us. And I had to teach to a class screaming at the top of my lungs in a circle. And it was tremendous. And what we did there together is come up with 5 different ways of engaging and combating colonial violence. The first one is do nothing and be the best you can be. And it's valid because it's not always safe. It's not always safe for us to say, like with that security officer today. It wasn't safe for me to say, hey, it's not okay for you to ask me if I'm loitering. I'm here, I'm a speaker. I'm a fancy person today.
Ego damage, emotional damage. Ego was hurt. And so, wow. So the interpretation of this security guard who is doing their job and ask you why exactly it is that you're sitting in the place that you're sitting where you're probably not supposed to be sitting. There's probably some type of no loitering sign. And because your ego is damaged, because you say, how dare you? I'm an important person who matters so much that should never be asked that question. How dare you? The audacity. That, ma'am, is nothing more than your own pride. It is your hubris. It is your own haughtiness. That's what is at play in this situation. So when you try to paste this onto colonialization. Do you guys see how her entire speech has basically been on the basis of her being called out for loitering? That's what this entire speech has geared towards, that very same thing. It was dangerous for us to it was dangerous for you to throw a hissy fit, a temper tantrum, because the security guard asked you, why are you here? Yeah, no, we can leave these people. We can leave these people behind. We can leave them behind. I'm okay leaving them behind. I don't even try to teach. Leave them behind. Let them be where they are. As they say, you cannot outdo stupid. You can't undo stupid. It's just there. It's just there.
Fancy person today. Because they had that position of power, and because they could have told me, hey, you're not allowed to be here, and I could have not talked. And in that, like, deciding whether it's safe for us, we also have to position ourselves. And we get to see, where are we? Where am I the oppressor? Where am I the oppressed? What power do I have? Where am I disempowered? And how can I engage with this? The second one is a call out. And call-outs we have to be really careful with, because a call-out, sometimes people find inherent violence in it. And a call-out is where you say, hey, this is what you did. This is how it made me feel. This is why it's problematic, maybe tied to some systematic oppression. And then you ask for the response.
This is actually really important that we watch this as regular, sane human beings, because this gives you insight on how these people actually think. So that's why I will continue to do these, even though, you know what I mean? Like my brain cells are fighting for survival right now. But I believe this is crucial. This is very valuable in the fact that it shows us the levels at which they go. Like, she's giving you a 1-2 step. I like it when you 1-2 step. She's giving us a 1-2 step in this, where, okay, they may perceive this advice. So when you are coming off aggressively, when you are now combating and fighting, you must understand that these are the ways that you call their own aggression. So you fight them, you attack them. And then when they start to attack back, what you're going to do is maybe just sprinkle in some systemic racism in there. Just a little bit of injustice, just a little bit of oppressed narrative. That's it. Notice your own level of oppression and oppressor, and then go on to mention their own. This is a level of projection that is unprecedented. These people move through life thinking about nothing but race, gender, oppressed, oppressor. Their levels of guilt must be insurmountable and uncalculable. My God. This is incredible, folks. This is incredible. Wow. Yeah, I'm going to go. Y'all can watch the rest. There's only like 3 minutes left. Y'all can watch the rest on your own time. I've seen what I need to see here. I've seen what I need to see. Till the next time, peace.
I used to be afraid of the dark, a place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2-step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 3, 6, 5, that's a